All right, Gerveret, if you would, please introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are.
I am Princess Zeridah Yehudah. I'm the wife of Chief Prince Hezekiah Yehudah of Shaddai Shemayim, also of the Temple Beit Avshalom. I'm also the daughter of the late Prince Eliezer Nazeh and Yamaria, Princess Yamaria from the Tabernacle of Israel in Brooklyn.
Can you tell us a little about the Tabernacle of Israel, right?
Tabernacle of Israel.
The Tabernacle of Israel in Brooklyn. Can you tell us a little bit about that and the beginnings? Where did it start? How did it start? And just run down some history for us.
Okay. Well, the Tabernacle of Israel began like in the late to mid 1940s. They received their first building legally in 1952, which was 905A Gates Avenue. But prior to that, they was also at 310 Tompkins Avenue in Brooklyn. And prior to that, they were in the home of Priest McMurren, Moni Ima McMurren, Mother Hamashula, Ima Hamashula's family. You know, they started there at home, and they grew, and they went into 310 Tompkins, and then from there, they bought the Tabernacle of Israel building on 905A Gates Avenue.
When I spoke to you previously, you told me that the beginnings really came from a group of people that were going to a church, and they just started reading the Tanakh and the Torah, and they realized that they were the children of Israel.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that history?
Sure. That was the family of Ima Hamashula, right? They came from the South. They was in the Church of God in Christ, and they were singers. You know, the brothers were from quartets and various things like that. And the mother, they was really religious people. And the seer, she came here, Yeshania, which was their older sister, and Moni Ima came to New York City. And that had to be like around in the 1930s or so. They came here, and towards the 1940s, the early 1940s. When they got here, they learned, and they sent for the mother, Ima Hamashula, and their sisters and brothers, and they came here. So they was worshiping at home after a point, because they found out in reading Torah that they should have been keeping the seventh-day Sabbath, you know, and they started there, and that they were Hebrews. And we didn't even use the word Israelite too much at that time. You know, it's basically we're Hebrews. And from that point, they met Elder Hill, who was an elder at that time. And he introduced them to High Priest McMurren. And High Priest McMurren came in and started talking with them also about what he was already doing for some years. And so now they know that they're not an isolated little group of people in the house, you know, and there were others that felt like they did, you know, worship like they did. And from that point, they all come together at home. They was travel around singing, you know, and everything. The sisters were singers. Okay. The mother, the sisters, you know, the family were singers. And they grew from that point.
So, Tabernacle didn't have any connections to Rabbi Matthews and Commandment keepers.
No, they came from a whole different set. They were priesthood Knesset, and they came from a different source. They were aware of them, from what I was told. They were aware that they exist, that Rabbi Matthews existed, but they were not a part of that group.
Okay. So when we discussed it previously, you told me that certain men came from Chicago, from I believe Cincinnati, Nasi Yaakov and Bamberg and all of the. Can you explain that story to us a little?
Well, they came actually before I was even born.
Okay.
And I was born in 1955. We had the temple in 1952. Okay. We were doing immersion in 1948, 49. They were already in existence, so they were here when I was born, because I remember them from a baby. Okay. You know, and we had different type of doctrines going on there at the time. You had those that felt they wanted a kingship. We wasn't with that. They were not with the kingship thing. That's where
Right.
King David and all of them came in, Mother
Right.
Wisdom, all that was happening at that time. They more so leaned towards the priesthood. They believed more in the sanctity of the word, the spirituality of the word.
Right.
They were not so much into nationalism at all at that time. It was basically about spiritualism. And the men operated like that. Prince Yaakov was there, Bamberg was there, Rabbi Brashaw was there. These were all young men. I think they were basically, some of them were under 20 years old.
Rabbi Raphael.
Rabbi Raphael, he actually brought my father in at the age of very young, under 20. When my father came.
So Rabbi Raphael he grew up in that place.
Right. He grew up in the Tabernacle of Israel. He was the beginning of the Tabernacle of Israel.
Yeah, it's funny because when you showed me the legacy book, I seen the picture with Nasi Yaakov with a talis on, and I don't know if it was a yarmulke or he had something on his head, but a lot of Israelites won't believe that picture until they see it.
Yeah, we learned. We there was a lot of things they were learning. It was new for them. They were coming from the South. They didn't know anything about African history and all of that thing. Africa to us was Tarzan and Jane back in the 30s, 40s, 20s, or whatever. Right. In 60s. So they were taking baby steps, and basically it was just getting all of their wisdom, knowledge out of what was in Torah. Even the culture itself, in Ezekiel 16, when the Most High talks about, the fine fabrics, we put hair in your head, jewels in your nose, and things of that nature. So the women started to adopt, those things with the fine fabrics and wrapping themselves, and, most of the Afrocentric Hamitic styles, we were not with that.
Oh, so you guys concentrated more on the Eastern look.
The more Eastern look, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. More Shemitic type look, yeah. And that's where the mothers learned. And we were not wrapping the taboo yet. I actually think that came with Prince Yaakov. Because the men in the tabernacle, they wore the suits and the ties, but they would wear like the little kippas, but they were putting certain wraps around the, borders around, to separate them from the Jewish, European Jews. So, and the women always wore the saris. We wore saris. I have pictures of myself in the journal in the sari at the age of 6 and 7 and 8 years old. We would wear them basically during Sukkot, Hanukkah, various festivals. We would dress that way,
Okay, so you guys already had a sense of culture even before the 60s when the whole Black Power movement and all that.
This was going back to the 1940s, 50s. Late 40s, early 50s. That's what we were doing. Our parents were creating their culture, the Israelite culture, what they felt was Israelite culture.
You also told me about the last time that we spoke about the spirituality of the place, how the people used to just dance. Can you explain a little bit?
Let me tell you, these men were totally uninhibited when it came down to giving praise to the true and the living God. They would lubricate the sanctuary floor. They would jump from the front of the temple all the way to the back. And it could be because they came out of that spiritual background, out of Christianity and various things like that. So that inhibited, they didn't have that inhibitedness about being a part of praising God. They had a humility on them at that time, and it was high praise. It was about giving praise to the Creator, because there's nothing else he needs from us. But obedience and praise. And that's how they would teach us, praise God, and that's what they did. The men would fall down and they would supplicate themselves to the Most High. They were very humble. I remember watching the men wash each other's feet during Pesach. It wasn't until later on that I heard them say that was something probably that had to do with Yeshua or Jesus Christ or whatever you would call, but I didn't see it that way. I saw it as humility, no different than the Malachim coming into, Abraham, and Abraham offering them to wash their feet. Not that he washed them, but the fact that they did that out of hospitality, humility, and that's what I was taught, and whether a priest can come down and wash the feet of his brother, or wash the feet of his sister, or his brother's wife or children. Those are all humbling experiences that I remember of the Tabernacle of Israel.
Also, you had spoken to me and you told me about the different, the offerings that you guys used to make. And it wasn't really lamb or anything like that, but it was fine meal, and can you explain it and how you guys felt as children when you seeing the smoke go up? Because I thought that was an interesting
Right.
story.
You know, a lot of things that, you know, we are not doing now. You know, you hear, well, we don't have a priest, you know, we're not in the land, you know, and all these various different things like that, you know, were cut out of the community, so to speak. But me growing up, those were teaching tools for me. Okay. You know, when we knew we could not offer up the bullocks, the doves, the lambs, and of that nature. But what we did bring was fine flour. And when we brought that fine flour, you know, we would atone. You know, at the time we needed to atone, we would atone. That's how we did it. And the priests were workers. They worked. I mean, they were humbled and they worked. From sundown to that morning, they would burn that flour. You know, when we came in, they were working. They would take shifts. It was a spiritual thing happening. And, you know, we as children, we would sit, you know, in our little seats, because we don't read Torah. We only know what we see and what we hear, what they tell us. We don't know. We're not reading yet. So our understanding came from one doing. So we would watch the smoke go up over, you know, from behind the sanctuary. We used to watch the smoke go up, and we would look at each other and say, oh, maybe that's my sin going up there. Or maybe my family's atoned. Or I know what I did last week, you know. You know, so we had that spiritualness about ourselves as children, because we were watching this. We hear them speak about the sweet savor. But what does that mean to us as children? You know, well, for us, it was they were doing it. It was the sense of obedience, that they were following, they were doing what Lord had told them to do. They were working. So that, you know, and as I got older, I began to understand that what they had was the willing heart. And I think that's what the Creator was looking for. Or I think that's what He looks for, is the willing heart. And they had the will to do whatever it needed to be done. And from that we learned. And as I got older and I began to read Torah for myself, I began to understand what the sweet savor was all about. And I understood what the men were doing, how hard it is to be a priest. That's not an easy position that you could just jump into like that. And I had something to bounce off of, because I had a congregation of priests from the 1940s and 50s. So I was able to identify with their work, you know, identify with that.
So moving along, 1950s and then the 60s, what transpired with the Tabernacle, with Temple Tabernacle?
Tabernacle, you know, we had a lot of family, a lot of strong men, and there was quite a few Knessets that exist today that their leaders came out of the Tabernacle of Israel, or they passed through, or they studied in the Tabernacle in Israel. Another thing about the Tabernacle of Israel. Can
you mention some of those leaders?
Yes, Nabi Raphael Tate, he was one of the leaders. We had Moreh Tibak, which was in Bnei Zakin. that was in Bnei Adat. My father actually brought Moreh Tibak into the Tabernacle of Israel. And we had Rabbi Bradshaw, Nasi Yaakov. He came in from Cincinnati, but he was a part of the Tabernacle of Israel, and he was the part of the workings of Tabernacle of Israel until somewhere towards the mid-60s. Right. And they began to branch off. You know, you had the little rift going here and there, and everybody branched off and were moving in different directions, you know. But they were still brothers until the end.
Okay.
You know, that's one thing about them, that they had a strong brotherhood. Regardless of whatever their differences were, they respected one another.
So what transpired with Temple Tabernacle, as far as, because it's not here today, so what was the final, maybe the undoing of it, or did families just split up, or like?
Well, the families split up. Prince Yaakov, you know, they went on to do what they needed to do, which established Bnei Zakin. We were in Tompkins Park at one time. You know, we used to leave the temple and go over to Tompkins Park, and I was very young at that time, and we would worship there. Then I saw some of the brothers that were coming in from Chicago around that time, you know, so a lot of things started to change. And also what set in was the sense of nationalism. Okay.
60s.
Yeah, that whole scene, the nationalistic scene, started to set in, and you know, then I'm black and I'm proud started coming in, you know, and so things were taking a change, you know, back in the 60s. The spirituality of it kind of got lost over the years. We still have it because we're still a spiritual people, so that's not going to go anywhere.
Right.
It's just dormant, but it'll come back because the Creator is alive, and
Right.
it will come back, in the community. But Tabernacle was maintained. We had to break off. Nabi Raphael left. We owned a lot of things. Also, we had our stores going on there. Even on Saratoga, we had our own store up there. We had our own store over on Gates Avenue.
Right.
So they were about building.
Right.
They had their own land back in Long Island, which was owned by the Seer and the Tabernacle of Israel.
Right.
We used to do immersion. Some would say we were Christians because it may have seemed as though we was being baptized, but we also believe that you need to be cleansed on the inside as well as the outside. Because they felt that they were a tabernacle of priests. And they felt that was part of it. And we did that for a short period of time.
Right.
Then that stopped, because people change, ideas, situations, So they had differences in those ways. We shouldn't be going through immersion. We shouldn't have a priest. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do that,
So do you feel that subtracting those things kind of made it the organization more vulnerable to a fall, or do you feel like remaining in those things would have been better for the organization and moving forward, and it would have gave them more of an identity? Because it seemed like that was the identity of the organization, the spirituality, the priesthood, the offerings. Do you feel like once they took that away that it kind of...
Well, Tabernacle was holding on to those things, but a lot of the other leaders had different ideas about things. You had the princehood that
Right.
came in. You had polygamy that came in. A lot of them wasn't with it. Not that they weren't doing things, but
Right.
they didn't find it as being a part of the culture. So that was something that they wasn't so much with. And then you had the ego that always seemed to take over in a lot of things. People want to be leaders and they don't want to be, Indians. They want to be chiefs. So you have that too. That comes about. Everybody wants to get their point across.
Right.
Everybody has a point. It's no one person that's wrong about everything. But we have to learn how to, agree to disagree.
Okay.
Not dismantle all the time. Because what, one don't realize is that it affects the next generation. It affects the children, because the children were very much affected by the breakup. We were jumping from one Knesset to the next because we knew each other as family and as tribalism, as one unit. And next thing you know, we're just scattered all over the place. And the children are scattered too. And it's a spiritual way of scattering your children, and mental way of scattering us. And we're going to look for one another. We're going to reach out for one another. So what do? No one stops to think about the children. What is going to happen to them? What's going to happen? And then as you see from year, it goes on from one generation to the next generation, the same behavior. And then you have a broken community, as we have. The children are always affected. We have to take that into consideration when we make moves. When we do what we do and adults do what they do, they must take in consideration what's going to happen with our children. And that's not only in the culture, that's in your life. When you divorce, when you break up, when you choose another wife or you choose a husband, you must take your children into consideration, because that is your posterity. If that's not strong, then you're going to have a weak community.
Okay, so moving along from Temple, then you guys end up at Beit Absalom?
Yes. Prophet Yash, which was, may the peace and blessings be upon him, Mother Hamashula's, Ima Hamashula's husband. There was a lot of things going on. So, once again, the families are breaking up. That was a very large family also. And they were like the progenitors of the way of life in the temple there at that time. And so they made a split. Once he left, once Prophet Yash left, then his wife went with him, and then others began to follow. He was at home, and then Aunt Shania, which is Mother Hamashula's sister, we call her the seer. She was married to the overseer, and when they left, they were at home, and that was like, I say like 69, 70, when Temple Beit Avshalom opened, around 1970. Right. You know, so that family, then you got another family that's broken. There, you know, you had Nabi there over on Saratoga. Okay, then you had Rabbi Bradshaw, he left, you know, and he was going, you know, they did his thing with Rabbi Marshall and some of the other ones that came. Now the rabbinical thing is starting to become more, you know, prominent. People are grasping onto those things as well, right. You know. And then you have Prince Yaakov at Bnei Zakim, and the Tabernacle was still in existence. So everybody started moving off into different places. The children was bouncing from, like I said, from one place to the next, and still growing together, you know. And Bet Avshalom came about, you know, from that. Then you had those that left Tabernacle to join on to Imam Hamshula and Prophet Yash. And that was Cohen Udiel's family, the Barfields, you know, Aunt Latanya and Talia and Elkanah Barfield and, you know, Gloria Henderson and all of them, which is Gayla's family, and all of them.
Okay. And what year did Temple Tabernacle finally close down?
In the 70s, Tabernacle was still in existence. In 1980, I guess like around 80, 81, my son L'chaim was born in 79, and I wanted to have him blessed because we also believed in blessing our children, and that was something that I went to Prince Yaakov with, but they were not functioning like that. So a lot of things too that we were accustomed to doing as children, as we became a little older and we're having children, we're thinking that they still exist, and they don't. And these various different Knessets. Yeah, you know, and he says, well, you know, we don't do it like that, but we'll put his name in the book and, you know, give him his blessing or whatever, but we don't do that like we did in Tabernacle. So I had to go back to Tabernacle, where Priest Shabbatai, who was the assistant priest to Priest McMurren, he still, you know, was maintaining the Knesset, and I had my son blessed there. You know, because I'm still a sticker with that, you know. Irregardless of what the movement was, I was a Tabernacle baby, and my teachings came from the Tabernacle.
You wanted to keep strong with the tradition.
That's right. That's me. I'm a stronghold.
So, as we move right along, Beit Avshalom, its progression, how did it grow?
Bet Avshalom, oh my gosh, Bet Avshalom, the musical temple, the spiritual spirit, hospitality, you know, one thing about the Tabernacle and Bet Avshalom is that they put a lot into the women. You know, as young girls, they taught us to be poised and speakers, and, you know, we had to learn Torah. You know, the women were very astute, you know, and they believed that, you know, even on the Bima, we were probably the only Knesset that allowed the women to sit on the Bima. You know, but those women had to be learned women. You just didn't sit anybody up there. And the doctrine that they had basically was that a man doesn't walk without his rib. You know, the man can't stand up without it either. So if you see him, you see her. We wasn't trying to mimic the big Mikdash, you know, because we knew we were not the Mikdash Gadol, but it was a school of learning, you know, and that came with everything. It came with etiquette, how to be a lady, how to sit, how to speak, how to talk, you know, how to expound. Those are the things that the Tabernacle taught, and they were the same way at Temple Beit Avshalom. The women would learn it. They sat with their husbands. Their husbands sat a tad bit above them at a higher bima. The women sat on the lower bima, but they were there. You're not going to see the husband without the wife. And that's the way the Tabernacle operated. We believed in hospitality. We believed in eating together as a family. We didn't believe in being divided, that you bring this food and you have your family over there and this one's over there and you got your family over there. We was against that. They felt that we should sit at a table as one, and we pool like as a family, and we break bread as a family. And that's what Bet Shalom represented. When one came to Bet, you sit at that table, we all ate the same thing. We fed everyone. Anyone that comes to those doors.
I remember that, going upstairs.
Yeah, going upstairs. Yes, going upstairs. That's how it was, you know. And the mothers were at that table, and, you know, after we said, you know, we ate together, we had to pray, and we had to say, those they that put their trust in Yah shall know the truth and shall want for no good thing. And everyone had to say that. And that was led by the parents, the women. You know, the women always played a part in the service, or the, you know, the bringing up in the Knesset, or anything that had to take place, because they always said you're not going to find a house where mother and the father is not standing together. It's not a good house.
Right.
You know, if the man and the woman ain't standing together, it's not a good house.
Right.
You know, so right here we're in a learning stage here where we are in this diaspora. We're in a learning stage, and we have to learn to be family. And that's the way we were taught at the Tabernacle, and that's the way we were taught at Tabernacle Bet Shalom. It started with Adam and Eve as family, and it's still family. And that's what we are.
So, with Bet Shalom, what, if you care to share it with me, like, what were the things that happened that ended up, you know, Bet Shalom closing down, or if you care to share that with us, if there was something to why at that point there was no more Bet Shalom, and the doors were closed.
Temple Bet Shalom still exists. It will always exist. We are Bet Shalom here at Shadei Shemayim.
Okay.
Bet Shalom, what we did when we left Temple Bet Shalom is just bump it up a little bit. You know, we just wanted it to be a little bit more Hebraic. We said we had enough Knessets, enough tabernacles, enough temples. We need a school. So Shadei Shemayim, which is where we are now, is the school, and our spiritual hold is Temple Bet Shalom. So what we do, we're under the umbrella of Temple Bet Shalom.
Okay.
You know, our priests or rabbis or whatever you want to call yourself, ministry that we make here legally is under Temple Bet Shalom.
Okay, so Temple Bet Shalom is for everyone. Temple Bet Shalom is still alive.
We are alive and kicking. Hospitality, praise, teaching. Women still have something to say, you know. We're still Tabernacle, and we're still Temple Bet Shalom.
Right. Now, you've been around all your life in this way of life. What do you think are some of the things that ail us as a people, as a community, you know, as just organizations, different, you know, Knesset temples? What do you see? Because you've seen a lot in your years. You say you was born in 1955, so that you weren't ashamed to share that.
No.
Most women, so that makes you about 61 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've been in this way of life for 61 years. What are some of the main things that you see are our main faults as a community? And do you have any kind of like solution to some of the problems that we might have?
Well, basically what I see with us is humility. I feel that we lack humility, you know, and that's the key. That's the strong, and love and humility. You know, Torah, you know, the spirituality of the Torah, you know, the letter of the word, but there's the spirit of the word as well. And that is so very important that we don't lose insight of the spirit of the word. You know, we have to get back to our sanctity. It's so important that we have respect. We have to learn how to be men, women. We have, you know, this diaspora is not like any other. You know, people can speak about their Holocaust. You can talk about what happened in Vietnam and this and that over there, but there is no Holocaust like the African slave trade. We lost our integrity. We lost our God. We lost our sense of self. You know, our language, how to respect each other. We had a lot of issues before we came across here. That's why we're over here. Mm-hmm. But in it, we have to learn humility. Also, we have to have direction. We have to know where exactly we want to go. You know, we can we can fish and gather in people, but we got to know where we're taking them. And once you get these people, what are you going to do with them? You know, you got to be able to share. We have to learn to share. We have to broaden our horizons and believe that we can do it.
Right.
We have to believe in ourselves.
Right.
And Israel lacked believing in yourself and that you can really do this. We have the true and living God with us. We have the Torah in our midst. It's in here. We can do this.
Right.
But we have to humble ourselves. And it's going to take us some time. You know, we've been here a very long time, and before we even got here to this side of the waters, we were already scattered on the other side. So this is a walk that's going to take us some time. One step at a time, precept by precept. But most of all, humility and have some direction. Know exactly where it is that we want to go as a people. Whether we're here on this side of the waters or on the other side of the waters. What are we looking for and what are we trying to do? What are we building? And what about the children?
Right.
That's pretty much how I feel.
What what's going on with all of the about the families that were part of Tabernacle and Beit Absalom? Like, do you still keep in contact with some of the families? Are they still around? Or, like, what's going on with that legacy? Because since you guys are upholding it, like, I know there were many more families. Like, what's happening with? Do you know what's going on with some of the families?
Yeah, some of the families. I'm still in touch with some of the families. There are those in the families that have made conversions. They went halakha. Right. I even have those in my family that have gone halakha.
Right.
But they've been halakha for many years, like 40 years and
right.
things like that. Long time, 50 years.
Right.
Sisters and things of that nature. Right. Then you have those that went back into Christianity, never went back into. They didn't know Christianity from the beginning, but they have gone into Christianity.
Right.
And then there are those that aren't doing nothing at all.
Doing nothing at all.
We talk, we support each other still.
Right.
And everything. But as far as the family upholding Tabernacle of Israel, or right now, Temple Beit Shalom, I would think that it would be myself and my husband and those that are here at Shadei Shemayim.
You told me an interesting story that when you were little, that you guys went to a yeshiva. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, I didn't go to the yeshiva. I just went with them, because I was very little. But my sisters, that was another era. I was born and raised in Brownsville Projects, and at the early stages of my life, it was predominantly Jewish, the school and things of that nature. And Brownsville was a Jewish community. Belmont Avenue was all Jewish stores, Pickett Avenue. You had the yeshivas out there on Sutter Avenue, Blake Avenue, Chester Street, all Bristol Street, all going down that way on Sutter Avenue was yeshivas. And after school, my family, my older sisters, Yvonne, Renee, and Brenda, they would go to the yeshiva. There wasn't that many of us there at all. I think right there in the Brownsville Project was only 2 families that were Hebrew Israelites in 1940 and 50s.
Everybody else was Jewish?
Everybody else was Christians.
Was Christian, oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty much everybody was Christians. Because this battle wasn't so much with the European Jews, because at that time, again, they had their own Holocaust to worry about. We were not pretty much a threat to them in Brownsville. It was our fight basically with our own African people, because they didn't understand. It was just a lack of understanding. They had Christmas, we had a menorah. Who has a menorah in 1949, 1952? Okay, with naughty hair. Come on, nappy hair. You sitting up here with a menorah in your window. But so we had to fight about that. They wore the yarmulkes, the little beanies, my brother and them, and they would knock them off the hair and head and things like that. So it was fight. I fought often. Right. I guess that's why I'm as strong as I am today, because I had to protect my little sisters and brothers and different things like that, and. It was hard to explain exactly who you were at that time to your own people living right next door to you in the project, a close-knit community. They respected us for whatever it is that they understood about us. We were different, we ate different, we were kosher, we didn't eat the same foods and things, and we went to the same school. We was keeping the Sabbath. We were dressed in saris at times. We came outside with these little funny clothes to them,
Right.
And we didn't quite look like Jews either. You know, when you see a Jewish woman, she wasn't wrapped in a sari, you know, or had a white handkerchief flying from her head like my grandmother did, you know, or anything of that nature. And so it was a two-way dual role type of thing that we had to play as Hebrew Israelites in Brownsville. You know, as time went on, you know, I became very happy when I started to see, you know, more. Even with H.O.K came into Brownsville in that area, I started seeing more of the culture, right? But I noticed that the culture was just a little bit different. It was more Hamitic type to me. You know, that's just something how I identify with it. It may not be that's what it is, but that's how I identified as a young girl, because we didn't dress quite like that, you know. Because like I tell you, we're back from the late 40s, so there's a difference when you're in the 60s and the 70s and you're seeing something now. I was happy to see more people, you know, like myself, you know, keeping the culture and things of that nature.
What do you think should be the direction of Israel at this time?
To come together as much as we can, you know, whether it's on holy days, festivals, feast days, that we should gather together, you know, as a whole body. You know, we don't have to believe in all of the same things, but we are one people. And there are times that we should be breaking bread at that one table together. You know, we can't get too far from each other. You know, we have to be able to agree to disagree. You know, we have to stop airing our dirty laundry. That's not a good thing. Your business needs to stay at home. And we need to duke it out amongst ourselves. But we need to come together sometime to break bread at that table, irregardless of any of our differences. You know, one thing I love about the Shabbat that my mama used to say to me is that you can argue all week with your sisters and brothers, you may not even speak. But on the Shabbos day, y'all got to break bread. So there's going to be some sort of communication there on the Sabbath day. Because you just can't sit at that Sabbath table and just go through the whole day without having some sort of dialogue. You know, so I thank God for instituting the Shabbat day for us, because it is for us.
Okay. So my last question, one is, and I ask this question to everyone. So when it's all said and done, right, in all the interviews that I ask, I always ask people, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to remember you remembered as being a strong Hebrew Israelite woman with hospitality and love, and that truly loved the Most High God.
There you have it. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
And I don't know if Prince Hezekiah want to sit down in the seat now.
Ain't divide.
I really appreciate this time.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.